Hello everyone, and welcome to Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting series on what if Naruto become a Jedi Knight King. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. 6-year-old Uzumaki Naruto smiled as he tossed a little ball back and forth with his friend Shiranumi Ray. Ray was the same age as he with silver hair and bright green eyes, and dressed in a simple shirt and pants, just like him and all the other orphanage kids. They made fast friends one day after Naruto scared off some bullies who wanted to take her doll. It was the only thing she had of her family and she treasured it dearly. So at the moment they were playing together in the park like they always did every evening. The other kids and their parents had immediately left when they saw Naruto enter the playground, but neither Naruto nor Ray had really minded. They would play together or with some of the other orphanage kids if they came, or they would play alone. Now Naruto, Ray, and most of the other orphanage kids were like a close-knit family. They supported each other and encouraged each other. They all understood each other because they all had been alone, had no knowledge of their parents and family. One of the orphanage kids, Satoshi, in a rare insight had said, "We all lost everyone close to us before we even knew them. The least we can do is share each other's hurt and lessen the pain." The orphanage caretaker knew Naruto's condition, but he didn't mind. He had seen firsthand the destruction the fox had raged, being a Junin at the time. He had hated the fox for killing his wife and son, but no matter how hard he tried he couldn't hate Naruto nor see him as the hero he was. So he decided to just remain neutral on the matter, neither loving nor hating Naruto but simply doing his job as a caretaker. Naruto and Ray stayed that way in the park until almost nightfall, when the caretaker came to take them back to the orphanage. Once there, Naruto and Ray had dinner with the other children and went their separate ways to sleep. When Naruto went to bed that night he couldn't help but wonder if there wasn't something more out there he was destined to do. In the girls' section, Ray had the same thoughts before they both went to sleep. The next few days were the same as always, but Naruto and Ray couldn't help but feel that something had trained about them, something they couldn't place. They were walking to the playground when it happened. Out of seemingly nowhere 10 men in Chunin flak jackets surrounded them. Naruto and Ray looked confused, which made the men even more infuriated. "Demon!" One of them spat as he glared at Naruto. "Time to die, you demon!" another yelled. Naruto and Ray got even more confused before the ninjas attacked. Ray was pushed aside as the ninja attacked Naruto relentlessly. They threw kunai and shuriken at him, making cuts and scratches appear on his body. "Naruto!" Ray shouted as she tried to reach her friend. "Stay back, girl, or we'll kill you too," one of the men said, but Ray didn't hear him and kept trying to get through. "So you want to be a demon lover, Well, die with the demon." The man slashed Ray in the chest with the kunai, and Naruto from where he was watching grit his teeth in anger at them for hurting her. White-hot rage and determination to save her coursed through his veins as he stretched out his hand as if to grab her and stop him. Naruto glared at the 10 men in his way and imagined blowing them away, sending them flying into the buildings behind them. He felt a weird sensation flow through him as the Chunin suddenly went flying backward into the buildings, giving off an audible crunch as they hit. Naruto dragged his body over to his friend and collapsed. It was an hour later before the Sandaime and Kakashi found them and immediately rushed them to the hospital. Naruto awoke to find himself in a white room with 2 beds. Looking around he saw Ray in the bed opposite of him. He struggled to get out of bed and rushed to his friend's side. She had a large bandage across her chest from where she was cut, and that was it. The opening of a door brought him out of his concern for his friend and he turned to see the newcomer. He instantly smiled when he saw the Sandaime standing at the door in his Hokage robes. Ji-san, how is she? Is she going to be all right?" Naruto asked with genuine concern. The Sandaime smiled at him and gestured for him to sit before he replied. Naruto obliged and sat down on the bed, staring at Sarutobi expectantly. "Don't worry, Naruto, she will be just fine. Now why don't you explain what happened to me, please?" Naruto told him the entire story, including his weird ability. Sandaime got a strange gleam in his eye when Naruto mentioned how he sent the men flying. He reached into his robe and pulled out a dusty book at least 8 inches thick and gently handed it to Naruto. "Naruto," he began, "this book was entrusted to me by a friend of your family's before he died. He mentioned that you would develop this power one day, and told me to give it to you when that day came." The Sandaime handed Naruto the book and quickly excused himself, saying he had work to do. Naruto opened the book and began reading. "Greetings, young one. You are about to begin your journey in the ways of the Jedi. You will learn about the Force, how to use it, and how to build a lightsaber as well as many other things. First, let's explain what the Force is. The Force is an energy source that binds all living beings and creatures together. Now to begin, we must learn to connect to the Force. First, meditate and stretch out with your feelings and hear the living Force. Naruto was a little confused but followed the instructions nonetheless. He got into a meditative position and concentrated, imagining the Force as something touchable, and reached out to it. He almost lost control when he finally touched it. It was like he was the wind blowing through the grass, or like he was staring into the sun without damaging his eyes. It was simply put amazing. He read the book again. Okay, now that you have touched the Force, before we move on, you must continue meditating until you can touch the Force in the blink of an eye. Naruto grinned and sat down to meditate again. He pouted when it was harder than before to contact it. He tried again and again with little success. It was after his 30th try when Ray finally awoke. Naruto stopped what he was doing and rushed to greet his friend. "Ray, are you alright? Please say you're alright." "Don't worry, Naruto, I'm fine, though a little sore." "Ray, you'll never believe it. It was so awesome. Ji-san gave me this book to train me in this thing called the Force, and it was so cool. You got to try it." Naruto practically yelled at his best friend. Ray just gave him one of those looks and agreed. She read the beginning of the book and got into a meditative pose and concentrated. Like Naruto, she also touched the Force, and was amazed. So both agreed they would train together. They nodded and began meditating again, trying to reach the Force at will. They didn't even notice they were trying for the entire 6 hours they were in the hospital, only taking a few breaks for water, food, or the bathroom. When they were released, they were almost able to call upon it at will. I'm going to go through several time skips including their training. 1 week later, Naruto and Ray ran through the orphanage giddy. They could call on it at will now, and they were going outside to practice the next step. They got to a secluded area in the yard and sat down before opening the book. Now that you can call on the Force at will, you will notice that meditation has increased your focus and patience. Continue meditating whenever you can, but for now we will move on to the next step. Find several medium to large stones and concentrating on using the Force to levitate the stones. Continue this exercise until you can levitate them for 15 minutes straight. Naruto and Ray gathered some stones and began to attempt to lift the stones. They got the stones more than that. They frowned. This exercise would be harder than the others. Time skip 8 weeks later, Naruto and Ray sat panting on the ground, utterly exhausted as they rested. They had just finished the exercise and were eager to continue onward. They relaxed for a bit before they opened the book again and read the next exercise. Okay, you completed the levitation exercise. Now next you want to find a rock a little bigger than your hand and balance upside down on that rock with one hand while simultaneously levitating rocks around you. Ray and Naruto groaned. This would be very difficult. Time skip 12 weeks later, Naruto and Ray had began to mature a bit from their training and gain some slightly noticeable muscles. They were now both 7 years old, 1 year away from joining the academy. They were excited because they would finally move on to the next step in their training. They read the book again. Now that you have completed this exercise, it is time to construct your self-training lightsabers before you move on to real ones. A lightsaber is a blade made of pure energy, able to cut through anything except another lightsaber with ease. Now you will begin with training lightsabers, which are toned-down versions that only sting when they hit. Below are instructions on how to make a lightsaber. Naruto and Ray read the directions quickly. Some of the items they didn't have a clue as to what they were. So they decided a trip to the Hokage was in order. They took the back alleys to the Hokage tower so as to avoid confrontation. Once they entered and explained their situation to the Sandaime, he frowned before pulling out a large scroll from a shelf and gesturing to them. Naruto, this was left for you when you needed it. Just smear your blood on the scroll and what is inside will reveal itself. The Sandaime told them as they ran out the door. Once they got back to the orphanage, Naruto immediately smeared some blood onto the scroll and stepped back as there was a loud pop, and in front of them appeared hundreds of parts and crystals, along with 3 cubes. Naruto and Ray set the cubes aside for the moment and proceeded to grab parts and crystals before following the instructions and began building. 2 hours later they were finished constructing the blades and activated them. They were amazed as the energy blades sprung to life. Naruto's blade was cerulean blue while Ray's was a deep purple. They gave the blades an experimental swish before going back to the book. Now that you have built your training blades, look for 3 cubes that came with the parts. Find the blue cube and concentrate on it with the force before continuing. Naruto and Ray found the cube and concentrated on it with the force before jumping back in shock as the figure of a man outlined in blue appeared. The man was in his apparent mid-40s with a lot of facial hair and amusing smile. Obi-Wan Kenobi. Hello young Padawans, the man said. I am Obi-Wan Kenobi. You are currently witnessing a Jedi holocron, which has stored data of past Jedi Masters. I am here to instruct you in the ways of the lightsaber. Now don't worry, through the Force I can see and instruct you in the lightsaber forms. Let's begin, shall we? Naruto and Ray readily began their training. Time skip 7 months later. Naruto and Ray had finished the basic forms and began working on the more advanced forms. Time skip 5 months later. At their 8th birthday, the caretaker of the orphanage mysteriously died, and was replaced with a man who hated Naruto with a passion. It wasn't a week before he was kicked out of the orphanage. Ray was soon adopted by the Shizuru family while Naruto was given an apartment. Though they were split up, Naruto and Ray decided to meet in secret and continue training. Time skip 1 week later. First day of the academy. Naruto and Ray stood side by side outside the academy, determined to become great ninja. Ray was dressed in a simple green kunoichi outfit while Naruto was dressed in a Padawan robe that had come with the parts. They had discovered in their training that the green holocron offered wisdom while the purple holocron taught force techniques. They walked into their classroom and sat down alongside a boy in a trench coat and glasses. Being courteous and polite, they decided to introduce themselves. Hello, my name is Uzumaki Naruto and this is my friend Shizuru Ray. What's your name? The boy turned to look at them and simple said, Aburame Shino, a pleasure to meet you. Shino's lack of words didn't discourage them and they engaged in slight small talk while observing the rest of their classmates. Below them, a pink-haired girl and a blonde fought over a black-haired boy who was looking slightly nervous at the duo. Naruto and Ray dismissed them without much thought and moved on. Across from them sat a girl in an overly large jacket, sat blushing and twirling her fingers. Next to her was a loud boy with a dog on his head and triangle markings on his cheek. Above them were 2 boys. One had hair that resembled a pineapple who was snoring loudly, sitting next to a boy with swirls on his cheek and was munching on chips. Naruto and Ray thought they looked friendly before quietly observing the rest of the class. After a few minutes, the class quieted down as a man in a Chunin flak jacket with a scar across his nose and a man with white hair walked in. They introduced themselves as Amino, Iruka and Mizuki, saying they would be their teachers for the next 4 years. After some yelling at Kiba to shut up and sit down, the class began with theories of chakra as well as several laps around the academy. While some of the students had trouble, Naruto and Ray were well fit and kept up at the front. The class continued on with studies on math, strategy and history and other subjects. Naruto and Ray listened intently to what they were saying, having learned patience and wisdom from their training. The Sandaime had forbidden them from showing off their powers until after graduation so that the council wouldn't be able to influence them to train others against their will. When class ended, Naruto and Ray slipped away from secretly and began training again in the Jedi arts. It wasn't until the next morning that they heard the news of the Uchiha massacre. So tell me, how did I do? Was it at least slightly believable? One of the characters from the fillers and or Shippuden, aka Princess Haruna, the star ninja girl. Please tell me the episode they appear in. Isaribi, or Yugito? Yugito is Cloud's Jinchuriki. Also vote for OC only or harem. Harem must consist of girls not from Konoha or Suna. It would mess up my plot ideas, except for Hinata if she wins the 3rd Force user poll. Konohagakure no Sato day of the Genin exams. Uzumaki Naruto sighed. It was a boring day. Even though it was the day of the graduation exam, it was a waste of time for him. He knew it would be on the Bunshin no Jutsu, a jutsu that he couldn't do, and of course if he couldn't then he'd fail. He could always use the Force to persuade them to let him pass, but that would be of the dark side. Pushing those thoughts out of his head, he turned his attention back to the rest of the class. Uchiha Sasuke, Rookie of the Year and all-around Lord of the Emos and Brats. Ever since the massacre he had turned cold, distant and power-hungry. Naruto and Ray shivered whenever they saw him. It was like looking at a beacon of the dark side. Now Naruto was usually a calm person, but whenever Sasuke flirted with Ray his blood began to boil, but he never knew why. Shizuru Ray, his best friend in the world, sat next to him staring at Iruka as he lectured on about the exams, or at least that's what it looked like. She was actually in a meditative trance, probably conserving energy for the actual exam. She had blossomed in the 6 years he'd known her. She now wore a green battle kimono that clung to her form, showing off her curves and assets. Regardless to say, she had many fanboys and secret fanboys, one of which being the aforementioned Uchiha. Ray and him had continued training together in secret. Now they were skilled enough to use actual lightsabers. RHT saber to stay a single hilt with a silver blade, just like her hair. Naruto, however, had chosen to wield a staff saber with a blue blade that could split into dual blades. On Naruto's other side sat Aburame Shino, their next best friend in the academy. Shino was quiet to anyone else, but with Naruto and Ray he was more open and spoke quite a bit. He was still dressed in the same trench coat he wore when they met. The rest of the students he knew had not changed much. Kiba was still brash and arrogant, Sakura and Ino were still love-struck fangirls. Shikamaru was still a lazy bum. Choji still ate a lot. And Hinata was still the shy Hyuga from before. Naruto groaned when he remembered how Ray had told him to act the part of dead last at least until he graduated. He hated being an idiot. He wanted to beat the Uchiha into a pulp. Naruto sighed as Iruka finally called his name to the testing room. He inwardly smirked at the sneers and whispered insults they threw at him. No one expected him to pass. Well, when he walked out with a headband they would be upset. He entered the room and saw Iruka and Mizuki sitting at a table nearby. He walked up to them and waited for them to explain the rules. "Okay Naruto, all you have to do is make 3 bunshin to pass," Mizuki said as he stacked some papers. Naruto grinned at them. He already knew what to do. He need only use a technique a friend taught him. Flashback no jutsu. A 9-year-old Naruto stood in the middle of the training grounds meditating while levitating 3 rocks around him. He was doing perfectly fine until he heard a twig snap and he lost his focus, sending the rocks flying to the noise. There were 3 loud clangs before everything went silent. He decided to figure out what happened and walked over to the bushes. Pulling away the branches and leaves, he found a man in a Junin outfit with a senbon in his mouth, swirly-eyed with 3 bumps on his head. Naruto's sweat dropped. This was a Junin. He waited for the Junin to come to his senses while thinking about how to explain it to the Junin how important it was to not say anything. He was brought out of his thoughts as the man groaned before sitting up. "What happened?" The man mumbled and Naruto mentally sighed. The blow to the head erased the memory of what he had seen. "Well sir, I was out here practicing the bunshin no jutsu when you slipped and fell unconscious," Naruto lied. "Huh? Why can't you do the bunshin? It's easy," the Junin asked. "Well, I have too much chakra for it." Well kid, my name's Shiranui Genma and I have the perfect jutsu for you," Genma replied. End flashback. Yep, Genma had taught him Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Sure, it had taken over 2 years, but he had mastered it. Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto lied again as 3 shadow clones appeared beside him. Iruka was ecstatic that his favorite student had passed, but Mizuki, however, was livid. How would he get the scroll now? Naruto picked up a headband and put it on before walking back into the room triumphantly. Everyone except Ray and Shino were dumbstruck. The Dobi passed. Sasuke was upset but didn't say anything. However, others who were more vocal in their emotions were glaring and yelling profanities. Foremost among them was Haruno Sakura. Naruto, however, ignored them and sat down beside his friends. The rest of the exam went by well, with many graduates who beamed proudly at themselves and the people who failed cried, promised to do better next year, or in the case of Haruno, Sakura wailed that she wouldn't be with Sasuke. Yep, Sakura failed. Yippee, I always knew she didn't deserve to pass. Naruto and Ray just left Sakura to her grief and walked out of the academy. Naruto had to duck and hide as Mrs. and Mr. Shizuru congratulated their adopted daughter, promising her to make her favorite dinner. Naruto turned to walk away but found a hand on his shoulder. He turned around and saw Ray there, giving him a compassionate look. Naruto was about to protest, saying that she'd get in trouble with her parents and that it was a waste, until he felt 3 people pull him into a heartwarming hug. For once in his life, Naruto didn't know what to say or do. He was completely shocked. Mrs. Shizuru looked at him with loving eyes and said, "Poor child, you thought we'd berate you for being near our daughter like all the others. Oh, you poor dear, come with us, I'll bet you don't have a home to go to." She left him no room to argue and dragged him and her husband off to the nearest restaurant, with Ray simply following closely behind. That night was one of the greatest nights of Naruto's life. They went to a fancy restaurant and after many threats got them to serve him good food. They ate and talked while laughing like an actual family would. What was even better is that they accepted him unconditionally, unlike most everyone else. He actually felt truly happy for the first time in a long time. And to top off the evening, they offered to take him in and house him. Which, like with dinner, he couldn't say no, not that he really wanted to. So it was with an extremely easy heart he grabbed every belonging he had and followed them home. Mrs. Shizuru frowned at his little clothing and determined to take him shopping later. The next day Naruto awoke to the smell of bacon and eggs and made his way downstairs to breakfast. After eating with the family, he and Ray rushed off to the academy for team assignments. Once they arrived at the academy, they sat down in their normal seat next to Shino and waited. They didn't have to wait long as Iruka walked into the room and yelled for everyone to be quiet. He began rattling of team names. Teams 1 to 6 are irrelevant. Team 7 Uchiha Sasuke, Shizuru Ray and Uzumaki Naruto. Team 8 Hyuga Hinata, Inazuka Kiba, and Aburame Shino. And Team 10 Yamanaka Ino, Akamichi Choji, and Nara Shikamaru. Naruto and Ray cheered. They would be on the same team, while mentally Sasuke thought perverted thoughts about what he would do to Ray when they were alone. Yeah, Sasuke's a dirty bastard, but hey, I dislike him a lot. Ino and Hinata were put down for not being with their crush but decided to make the best of it anyway. Alright, now wait here for your senseis to come and pick you up. 3 hours later Naruto was pissed. Not the I'm upset or even the I'm really upset. No, this was you stupid moron, I'll keelhaul ya upset. Why, you may ask? Well, it's simple, his sensei was over 3 hours late. He grinned sadistically as he thought of all the ways to torture their sensei. It was at this moment that a silver-haired man poked his head through the door before grinning sheepishly at them, though you couldn't tell through the mask. Naruto twitched as they got up and followed the man up to the roof. The man sat down on the railing and sighed before continuing. My name is Hitaki Kakashi. My likes, dislikes and hobbies are none of your concern. Now you blondie next. Naruto twitched again. All we got was his name. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. My likes are my friends, training and ramen. My dislikes are closed-minded people and jerks, and my hobbies are training. My dream is to become a great ninja. Kakashi nodded and turned to Ray. My name is Shizuru Ray. My introduction is the same as Naruto-kun's except for ramen. No, the kun does not signify romance. Shizune calls Naruto Naruto-kun, it's just added for endearment. Kakashi sighed in relief and turned to Sasuke, who inwardly cursed. She didn't have any feelings for him, but that's impossible, no women can resist him. My name is Uchiha Sasuke. I have very few likes. He glanced at Ray. I have many dislikes. This time glaring at Naruto. And my dream is to kill a certain someone and revive my clan. At the last part he glanced again at Ray, which didn't go unnoticed by Kakashi. Kakashi then went on to explain the test before disappearing in a cloud of smoke, leaving the genins behind. Naruto and Ray glanced at each other before nodding in silent agreement not to fail as they too went home. Next day, Naruto and Ray made it to the training grounds, having taken Kakashi's advice and not eating, though through the force they could put off their hunger for a while by Sasuke, who grunted at the sight of their missing sensei. When Kakashi finally arrived, Naruto and Ray had to resist the urge of taking their lightsabers and cutting off his hair for revenge. Kakashi smiled sheepishly and walked over to a stump and set a timer on it. This timer will go off at noon. You have until then to get these 2 bells from me, and yes, one of you will be going back. Also, the one who fails will be tied to the stump over there and watch as I eat my lunch in front of them. They all groaned at that but instantly perked up when Kakashi started the timer. They dashed into the bushes, or Sasuke did at least. Naruto and Ray stayed standing side by side in front of Kakashi. You two are a little odd, don't ya think? You'll see, sensei, they replied at once. Naruto and Ray drew out their lightsabers and activated them. The look of shock, awe, curiosity, and nervousness spurred them on as they dashed at Kakashi. Naruto swung on side of the saber at Kakashi's head, forcing him to duck, while the other side swung around at his legs, forcing him to jump. Ray took the moment to thrust her blade at his chest. Kakashi spun in midair and landed on his feet before throwing several kunai and shuriken at them. They responded by cutting them cleanly into pieces. Now Kakashi was getting scared. If they cut through that so easily, then if he gets hit, oh boy, it won't be pretty. Naruto and Ray continued their onslaught against Kakashi, who was never so thankful for his skill ever before. Naruto dropped back and using the force pulled a large rock out of the ground and flung it at Kakashi full speed. Kakashi ducked before dodging to the right in order to avoid Ray's slash. He sighed he wouldn't be able to read his book at this rate. Sasuke sat in a nearby tree shaking in near rage. How could the Dobi have gotten this power? He was an Uchiha, he needed it more. No deserved it more than the loser. As he watched Ray dance around Kakashi's defenses looking for an opening, he became more and more determined to make her his. After 2 more minutes he couldn't take it and left his hiding spot charging Kakashi. Kakashi ducked as Sasuke's foot flew overhead and jumped back to avoid another lightsaber strike. He revealed his Sharingan under Genjutsu as he defended himself against the 3 Genin's onslaught. Naruto was about to grab the bell when the timer for the test ended. Kakashi sighed in relief as he walked back to the stump and adopted a thinking pose. He growled when he realized he had to pass them. Whether they realized it or not, they worked as a team to fight him. "All right, you 3, pass," he said and disappeared in a puff of smoke, intent on telling the Hokage and council of what occurred. Naruto and Ray stood there a moment before grinning and dancing for joy. Okay, so far Hinata is winning, followed by Shino, Yugito, and Yukie. I'll tally the harem votes later, also name the people you think should be in the harem. Anyways, here we go. Kakashi walked into the meeting early for once in his life, clutching a scroll in his hands for dear life. Naruto and Ray had displayed an unusual power and he needed to know if the Hokage knew about it. He coughed to get everyone's attention. Everything stopped, people staring at him, boring into his soul. Mouths were open, people were wide-eyed, some had even fainted. Suddenly he dodged Shuriken Kunai and every jutsu imaginable. "What's going on? There is no way you're Kakashi, you're on time," Enko shouted. "My test ended and it's important," Kakashi replied. "So you failed another team? Poor souls. I didn't, and that's why I'm here. 2 of my students displayed some rather interesting techniques," Kakashi cryptically replied. The Hokage knew where this was going. "Oh, do tell Kakashi," Sarutobi said with a smirk. "Better show you actually, Kinin Konrin no Jutsu, memory viewing technique." Kakashi unfurled the scroll and set it down as it glowed blue and an orb appeared showing what he saw from the battle. Everyone watched transfixed on what they were seeing. Glowing blades that could cut through anything. Telekinesis. These powers were though impossible. The Junin were jealous of Kakashi's team, while the council and clan heads as well as the civilian clans thought of ways to work this into their favor. Yep, Naruto and Ray were in for a lovely life. "Hokage-sama, were you aware they could do this?" Kakashi asked, truly curious. "Yes, I've known for 6 years. No, I will not disclose where they got this power." Back with Naruto and Ray. Naruto and Ray walked back to the Shizuru household when a dreadful noise hit their ears. Squealing as in rabid fangirls, fanboys of Ultimate Doom. Yep, just another one of those days. They turned around to see a mob of men and women running at them. Confused, they just stood there as the mob surrounded them. Questions were flung at them from every direction, questions concerning their lightsabers and telekinesis powers. Crap, they both thought. How everyone found out they could only guess. They used the force to propel them to a nearby roof and began running rooftop to rooftop, trying to escape the still pursuing mob. They saw a tavern and decided they'd hide there. They jumped into the door and winced when they heard a clang and a thunk. Yep, they hit someone. Naruto and Ray sighed as the mob ran by without seeing them. They then looked to the downed person. He was a male in green spandex with a bowl cut and fuzzy eyebrows. They shuddered a bit before they heard the booming voice of a man and turned only to freak even more. A carbon copy of the boy, only older, stood in front of them. The boy began to stir and sit up before clutching his head. "Oh, guys, sensei, I have a most unyouthful headache, please wait for me to relieve it." The boy fumbled around his pocket before he grabbed a bottle off of the counter. "Hey, what's this bottle for?" "Aw, there's my medication for this pounding headache." "Lee, no. I feel strange, hick wazoo looking at." The spandex boy was dancing around, destroying everything he came in contact with while his teammates tried to calm him down. Naruto decided enough was enough and grabbed Ray before running away at top speed. When they arrived at the Shizuru household, Naruto was almost completely out of breath. They opened the door only to see the inquisitive looks from Ray's parents. They sighed and explained the Force and the Jedi arts as well as what a lightsaber was. By the end, Mr. and Mrs. Shizor were thoroughly confused but accepted the answer nonetheless. Next morning, Naruto and Ray opened the door to go and meet their team when they were flooded, literally, with mail of all shapes and sizes. They were addressed to him and Ray. Dreading the inevitable, they began opening them. There were countless love letters, arranged marriage requests, and the such. Naruto and Ray sighed and used escape number 5. They jumped over the piles, leaving them for someone else. They took the back routes and arrived at the training grounds where Kakashi was waiting with a pissed Sasuke. Apparently reading the letters took longer than they thought. Thinking quickly, they thought of a great excuse. A black cat crossed our path, forcing us to take a different direction, but a little old lady needed help with her groceries, so we stopped to help, Naruto replied sheepishly. Kakashi just stared at him. Were his excuses that bad? Now that you're here, time for some thrilling D-rank missions. 3 hours later, D-rank missions were torture that instructors thought up to terrorize students, Naruto thought as he handed the infernal cat of terror back to the daimyo's wife. She grabbed the cat and proceeded to squeeze it to death. Sandaime-sama, can we please get a higher-ranked mission? Ray asked. You're in luck. I have a C rank that needs to be done, however we lack the necessary people to do it. The Sandaime began staring at the three of them. You are to go to Kumo and deliver a scroll to the Raikage. You will then wait for his response before returning here. Team 7 saluted and went home to pack their supplies. An hour later they were at the Gakashi. The mission must have truly been important. They came up with a quick travel plan and left. Kakashi-sensei, will we encounter enemy ninja on this mission? Sasuke asked hopefully. No, we won't. Mostly bandits and wild animals is all we will need to worry about, Kakashi replied. 3 hours into their trip they were halfway there. Naruto and Ray began to pick up faint presences with the force, but they were like an echo coming from one direction and spreading across the area. It troubled them a bit, but they remained resolute. When they were within an hour of the village, the echo appeared again, only this time it was louder, like a scream. Naruto and Ray couldn't take it. They fell to the ground, clutching their heads as they were hit with wave after wave of dark side energy. Naruto, Ray, what's wrong? Kakashi asked as he drew a kunai. Something's coming, we have to leave now, Naruto shakily replied as he tried to regain his footing, looking into the trees where the echo was coming from. What are you? Sasuke started but was cut off when a loud thumping sound echoed from the forest. They all turned in the direction of the sound when it came. The creature was almost 7 feet tall with large jaws filled with razor-sharp teeth. Its back was covered in spike-like projections. Its skin was a deep brown shade that allowed it to blend with the trees nearby. Its presence seemed to give off pure malice and anger. Naruto and Ray had to use every ounce of self-control to not flee right then and there. They had heard about these beasts from one of the holocrons. They were facing a dark side beast of unimaginable power. They were facing a Tarantatek. Those KOTOR 1 players know what I'm talking about. Kakashi threw the kunai at the creature only for it to shake it off like it was a fly. Kakashi-sensei, you can't fight it. That creature is pure malice. It won't be beat easily, Ray said. We can't outrun it either, so it leaves us no choice, Sasuke replied before charging forward and flashing through several hand seals. Kaden Gukaku no Jutsu. A giant fireball blew towards the creature, engulfing it in the flames. Sasuke smirked before ducking under a clawed hand. The Tarantatek roared and charged forward and body slammed Sasuke, sending him back several feet. Kakashi, Naruto, and Ray broke out of their stupor and charged forward at the creature. Kakashi summoned an Anbu sword from a scroll while Naruto and Ray drew their lightsabers. Kakashi slashed at the Tarantatek's chest. The beast howled in pain and hit Kakashi in the chest only to hit a log instead. Naruto swung his staff saber at the Tarantatek's arm only for it to do little if any damage. Ray did the same with little results. Sasuke jumped forward and slashed at its head, only to get once again slammed into the ground. Naruto rushed to help him only to get hit hard in the chest, knocking the saber out of his hand and sending him into a nearby tree. Ray now stood alone as the beast got closer and closer. She raised her lightsaber in a defensive stance. Where was Kakashi-sensei? The Tarantatek raised its clawed hand, preparing to strike before. Raikiri! Kakashi yelled as he plunged his jutsu into the beast's back. The Tarantatek howled in agony as it thrashed wildly. Kakashi knew that it wouldn't kill it, but it would buy them enough time to escape. Ray grabbed Naruto. We're sprinting to Kumo. Ray nodded and grabbed Naruto before flinging him over her shoulder and following Kakashi as fast as she could. Ray, what was that? Kakashi-sensei, I can't say at the moment. Kakashi sighed, he wasn't going to get any answers soon. Kumo, get your gates. I know I'm rushing, but I need to get them to Kumo. Kakashi and Ray landed in front of the gates and waited. A minute later a Kumo Bolt squad appeared surrounding them. We are the Genin team sent to deliver the scroll to the Raikage. 2 of my students are injured. We encountered what can only be described as a demon about 50 miles back. The first Bolt nodded and signaled for the gates to open. Once the gates opened, 2 Bolt escorted them to the hospital while the other 2 ran off in the direction of the battle site. At the hospital, Kakashi sat by his students' beds watching the 2 of them recover. Ray had already fallen asleep from exhaustion and was resting in a nearby chair. He sat up when the door opened and a man with a Junin uniform walked into the room. Kakashi-san, my name is Tanaka Yoshiro, second in command of Kumo's shinobi forces. Now please explain what happened to your team. Kakashi relayed his team's experience with the creature, while Yoshiro's eyes narrowed as he contemplated the intel. Bolt has confirmed the blood at the battle site. We have 3 teams currently searching for it. He took a look at Naruto and turned back to Kakashi. He heals faster than normal. Is he a Jinchuriki? Kakashi flinched a bit at that, but Yoshiro just smiled. Don't worry, Kumo has their own Jinchuriki by the name of Ni Yugito. We, unlike others, can tell the difference between demon and human. Kakashi relaxed a bit and turned back to his team. Naruto would no doubt be up in a few hours. I know this chapter was short, but it was meant only to be somewhat of a filler. No need to worry. Also, I just thought of something. Imagine Lee as a Jedi. Also, should Ray be a container like Naruto, it'll add to the suspense and romance. Yane Naruto awoke in a dank sewer, or at least that's what it appeared to be. He looked around curiously. This wasn't a forest, and where did his team go? In almost a daze he walked down the corridor, water splashing at his feet. He took several twists and turns before he found himself in a large chamber-like room. In front of him stood a rather large cage. A paper bearing the kanji for seal prominently adorned the bars. But that wasn't what got his immediate attention. Inside the cage was an enormous 9-tailed fox. Its crimson fur shone prominently in the sparsely lit room. The beast turned one of its blood-red eyes on him, and Naruto involuntarily shivered. The demon snorted and a bright red light enveloped it. Naruto watched in awe as the Kyuubi took on a smaller shape. When the light receded, there stood a woman, no goddess. She was about 6 feet tall with crimson-red hair that went to her waist. Her eyes were slanted like a fox's, and 2 red fox ears adorned her head. Her curves were absolutely perfect, and her obvious other assets. Let's not get into that, shall we? At the moment, if I write anything more, I swear blood loss from severe nosebleed will kill me. Hello, welcomes to my domain. Introductions are in order. I am the Kyuubi no Kitsune, sealed inside your belly by the Yondaime when you were an infant. And no, do not get any stupid fantasies about him being your father, because he isn't. In this story he isn't. Anyways, please, for all that is humane, imagine different scenery for this place. Still a little shocked about the revelation, Naruto thought back to Master Kenobi's descriptions of the old Jedi temple. The room abruptly faded before reappearing. This time around the room looked exactly like the room of 1,000 fountains. Kyuubi's cage was turned into the Jedi archive and the walls reformed to look less gloomy. Kyuubi nodded in satisfaction at her surroundings before looking at him. What? You expect more answers? Nope, sorry. And with that, Naruto was forcefully ejected from his mind. Hospital room. Naruto groggily sat up and massaged his aching head, hoping to stop the headache. It seems you're awoke, Naruto. Glad to see it. A male voice spoke. Naruto turned to see Kakashi leaning against the wall, his one visible eye reading his beloved book. Surely Kakashi would have the answers he needed. Kakashi-sensei, is the Kyuubi really sealed inside me? It came out as a simple question. Kakashi froze, his one eye wide with fear, and his hands gripped his book like a lifeline. He briefly wondered how Naruto knew, but now wasn't the time for that. Yes, was all Kakashi could think to say at the moment. Naruto's head dropped. No wonder everyone hated him. The glares, beatings, everything was explained. Naruto yoused the container, remember that? Naruto brightened at his sensei's acceptance of him, but remembered something he had wanted to ask Kakashi. Anyo, Kakashi-sensei, what is that book you read about? Kakashi smiled perversely and handed him an identical book from his pocket and left, saying he had something to do. Naruto pocketed the book for later and hopped out of bed before putting on his night robes and jumping out the window. He wanted to explore Kumogakure. As he walked around, he noticed the villagers and shinobi he passed didn't rebuke or scorn him. They actually seemed to treat him with respect and admiration. They couldn't know about him being a Jinchuriki. Kakashi had said that's what he was called by some. He didn't need to contemplate it further when he heard a voice behind him. Jinchuriki-san. Everything stopped. Everyone in the area stopped and stared at the confirmation. Naruto sighed and used the force to calm himself and turned to see a young woman maybe a year or two older than him with blonde hair braided into a ponytail and blue eyes. You know, if she weren't older I'd swear they were related. Naruto steeled himself and replied, "Yes, how can I help you?" "I wish to talk to you. Please follow me," she said as she took to the rooftops. Naruto decided to follow and jumped after her. They stopped at an empty training ground. The girl turned around and began to speak. "My name is Ni Yugito Kumogakure Chunin, but right now that's not important. I am also the Jinchuriki for the Nibi no Nekomata," she said. Naruto was shocked. Another like him? Well, it was possible, but he never expected to see anyone like him. "You're a Jinchuriki too, and the village doesn't hate you?" "Yes, I'm treated rather nicely. Is it true that Konoha hates you?" And so they talked about themselves, their friends and the adventures they had in their villages. Afterwards they parted ways, hoping to meet again one day. That night Naruto met up with Kakashi, Ray and Sasuke at the village gates. Their job had been done and it was time for them to go home. Sasuke was brooding and sneaking looks at parts of Ray he shouldn't, though only Kakashi noticed. Ray was yelling at Naruto about how he shouldn't be reading that smut of Kakashi's while Naruto just kept reading. "I always thought Naruto was a pervert." They were about to leave when Sasuke did something he would later regret. He groped Ray. Everything stopped, even nature. Sasuke was oblivious and continued groping. Then all of a sudden Ray turned to him, bloody murder showing in her eyes. And where did that mallet come from? Yep, Ray almost out of nowhere had grabbed a mallet and was twirling it in an eerily calm manner. Sasuke, finally realizing the trouble he was in, started to back away slowly before sprinting in the direction like the devil was after him. She was. Naruto and Kakashi ran after their two students, teammates, as they ran at an incredible pace towards Konoha. 5 hours later, along with various bruising in places that are better left unspoken, they arrived at Konoha. Ray was glaring fiercely at Sasuke as they walked into the village. The moment Kakashi dismissed them, Sasuke ran for his life, and with good reason. Ray was hot on his heels, the mallet of doom in her hand. Naruto decided that it was time for meditation. So he walked to the Shizuru house before locking himself in his room and entering a meditative state. Naruto moved cautiously through the streets of Konoha. He just gave the enemy the slip, and was trying to catch his breath. His robes were ragged and torn in several places, and his hair was disheveled along with near exhaustion. The evil creatures had chased him for hours relentlessly. He sighed as he straightened up his robes and prepared to walk to the team meeting. Q Murphy's Law. A high-pitched squeal rang through the alley and Naruto froze. Turning around slowly, he saw the things he had been running from all morning. The fangirls squealed again when they saw him. "Oh, come on!" Naruto yelled as he took to the rooftops, followed by any of his shinobi fangirls. Naruto jumped off the rooftop and dashed into the marketplace, trying his best to avoid any villagers as he ran from an enemy greater than paperwork. He turned down another alley and, using his shinobi training, jumped over the wall. Don't they ever quit? Naruto wondered aloud as he got closer to the training grounds. Naruto decided to use drastic measures and pulled out a kunai and smoke tag. Wrapping the tag around the kunai and flung it at the ground in front of the kunoichi. The diversion had the desired effect. The kunoichi stopped as the smoke temporarily blinded them. Naruto took the opportunity to dash up to the training grounds, a victorious smirk on his face. Team 7 training grounds. Sasuke and Ray patiently waited for Kakashi and Naruto, who both seemed to be late, or at least Ray was patient. Sasuke was brooding and grumbling about stupid dobes and late senseis while trying to sneak a peek at Ray. A loud pop and a poof smoke signaled the arrival of a late Kakashi holding a very distressed Naruto by the collar of his robes. Sasuke and Ray glared daggers at the late duo, who had the decency to grin sheepishly. Okay, now that everyone's here, it's time for sparring, Naruto and Ray, and Sasuke and myself. Sasuke smirked and began fighting Kakashi while Naruto and Ray calmly walked farther away to fight. Naruto was the first to strike. He charged Ray and used a sweeping kick in an attempt to knock her off her feet. Ray jumped over the kick, took out a kunai and threw it at Naruto's head. Naruto rolled to the side before retaliating with a flurry of taijutsu strikes at Ray, who evaded and replied with her own. Their attacks began to blur as they continued to probe the other's defenses. After 3 minutes they decided to take it to the next level and drew their lightsabers. Ray charged forward and slashed horizontally, aiming for Naruto's head. Naruto blocked the blade with one end of his staff saber before pushing forward, knocking the blade away and throwing Ray off guard. Naruto swung around with the other side of the saber only to have Ray duck under it and counter with her own slashes. Naruto blocked a few before deciding to take the battle elsewhere. He jumped onto a large branch nearby with Ray hot on his heels. They continue exchanging thrusts and slashes as they jumped from branch to branch. Naruto jumped back to another branch only to duck as Ray's blade flashed in the spot where his head used to be. He had to end the duel quickly or it could get very serious. Naruto parried another strike before swinging his blade at her head, forcing Ray to duck. Naruto grinned and kicked out with his left foot, catching Ray in the chest and knocking her to the ground. Ray was about to get up, however a lightsaber at her throat gave her second thoughts. "I win, Ray," Naruto stated as he deactivated his saber. "I'll beat you next time, Naruto-kun." "Well, good job you two. Practice is over for now. I have a meeting that I'm already 2 hours late for," Kakashi said as he disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Sasuke grumbled a bit before he left as well, leaving Naruto and Ray alone in the clearing. "Come on, Naruto, it's time to go." Naruto nodded to his friend and followed her home. Next morning, Hokage Tower. The scene at the Hokage Tower that morning could only be described as humorous. Kakashi and Naruto were reading their Icha-Icha while Sasuke was trying to appease a very angry Ray who already had her mallet of doom out. A cough from Sarutobi got their attention. "Okay, your mission is an important one. It is a B-class mission, and unfortunately we have no other ninja to spare. You will go to Hoshigakure no Sato and act as bodyguards for a boy by the name of Sumaru. Lately he has been attacked by a strange man, and every time he beats Sumaru's bodyguards using a strange jutsu." Kakashi and the genin nodded as they left the room. "Okay, gather your things and meet at the south entrance in 40 minutes. The genin all left to grab their gear and ninja tools. When they met up at the gate 40 minutes later, they were treated with the Shikashi was there, on time and waiting. He stared at their stunned faces, genuinely confused. He wasn't always late, was he? He shrugged it off and gestured them to follow him. They did so reluctantly, still expecting an ambush from enemy ninja. Kakashi sighed and pulled out his precious book. It would be a long day. Border of Bear Country. Kakashi and Team 7 came to a bridge separating Bear Country from Fire Country. The bridge area seemed to be free of enemies, but nonetheless he kept up his guard. Suddenly a ninja in full body armor and a gas mask jumped out from the clearing and attacked. Kakashi went immediately on guard while Naruto, Ray and Sasuke drew their kunai knives. The enemy attacked first, throwing several kunai while going through hand seals. Wind release. Crushing air pressure. Naruto, Ray and Sasuke suddenly felt like the air itself had started to crush them. The kunai knives kept straight for them. Naruto stretched out with the force and veered the kunai off course. The ninja's eyes widened behind the mask. The ninja jumped back and threw several more kunai. Earth release. Upside down earth wall. A wall of earth rose from the ground and blocked the incoming projectiles. Naruto, Sasuke, and Ray took that moment to split and attack. Sasuke started through hand seals, while Naruto formed a cross-shaped seal. Fire release. Grand fireball technique. Shadow clone jutsu. Several things happened at once. Sasuke spewed a fireball at the enemy, and 10 Narutos appeared, all holding shuriken and kunai knives, all grinning wickedly, and the enemy ninja paled considerably. The ninja jumped out of the way of the fireball but was unable to avoid the kunai and shuriken. They pelted him and he disappeared in a puff of smoke. The ninja reappeared behind Sasuke and kicked him to the ground. He turned to Naruto and kicked him as well. Now 2 things happened. A snap hiss of a purple lightsaber and a kunai at his neck courtesy of Ray and Kakashi stopped her. "Now who are you?" The ninja glared at him before taking off the mask and revealing a brown-haired girl. "I'm Hokuto, Chunin of Hoshigakure. You must be Hitaki Kakashi and the other bodyguards we hired." Kakashi just nodded and released the kunai from her neck. Naruto had had enough and yelled, "Hey, if you're from Hoshigakure, why did you attack us?" Hokuto glared at him with contempt before answering. I had to see if you were good enough and you impressed me, so shut up and come on. Hokuto began to lead them to Hoshigakure with Kakashi and a grumbling Naruto behind. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next part.